Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, August 3rd, 2022, and today we are going to be talking about the Kansas Abortion Amendment, in which voters resoundingly defeated the abortion in a pretty strong Republican state to limit access to an abortion across the state of Kansas. Now, before this video gets started, I do want to say that I apologize for not uploading for the past 3 days. I was in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, so I've been spending a lot of time just to myself for this summer. I tried to make videos, but unfortunately the internet did not go as planned, meaning that the internet was just very, very slow. I tried to upload on the first day and it took about 2.5 hours, so I realized that it wouldn't be realistic for me to pump out content for you guys while I was there, even though there was so much happening. I really wish that I was able to. There was just so many interesting things that happened and a lot more to cover over the next week. A lot of my videos that I had planned to do over the past 3 days have now been pushed out to next week, following some very interesting election results that are going to warrant probably 67 videos over the next couple of days. Now, today's video is going to be a focus on the state of Kansas, as I have already told you. Let me go ahead and push down the New York Times logo so you can see it there. But the results here are very clear. What we have found in Kansas's results is that red states, including ones similar to this one, meaning Trump plus 15 or lower, have begun to push back on what the Supreme Court's decision has done for women across this nation. The Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe v. Wade was not taken kindly. When you look at the numbers that show that 60% of Americans are on one side on the issue of abortion, it comes down to the question, where is this support coming from? And we knew that blue states such as California or New York were already going to be vehemently pro-choice. The legislatures there were never going to put forth or at least pass legislation limiting a woman's right to choose when it comes down to the issue of abortion. But some of these red states had immediately passed laws following the Dobbs decision. When you take a look across the nation, you find that many states have already implemented total and complete bans on the case of abortion. You take a look at states such as Alabama, Mississippi, Missouri, Texas, Montana, Florida, states that have red governors, red legislatures that took it upon themselves to go ahead and pass these restrictive laws when it comes down to the issue of abortion. Now, in the state of Kansas, it's a bit different. In 2019, the Kansas Supreme Court, which is definitely a little bit different than what you might expect for a state that voted for President Trump in 2020 by about 15 points, actually has a Democratic-controlled state Supreme Court. But the state Supreme Court ruled that abortion was protected by the Kansas state constitution, that it couldn't be overruled by no matter what a state legislature tries to do, because it is unconstitutional to limit a woman's right to an abortion across the state up till 22 weeks. So what Kansas voters did, or what the Republican legislature did, was put forth a referendum, one that was actually set to occur in the November election, but they decided to move it up to August in the hopes that a more higher turned out Republican primary would choose the yes option. This abortion amendment explicitly stated that if it passes, it will say, as I just said, explicitly that abortion is not protected by the state constitution. Essentially, this was the abortion ban being put into effect, but voters just had to say that the Constitution did not protect a woman's right to choose. And Republicans were very confident that this amendment would pass. A lot of the polls here had indicated that it was a very close race, or that yes was going to pass heavily. But to be fair, it was a very scarcely polled race, maybe a few across the past couple of months. But Republicans here were very confident. Many of them had come out and said that yes was going to completely obliterate no, that Kansas was a pro-life state. And considering what was at stake in the other down-ballot races in Kansas, there wasn't that much interesting on the Democratic side. More interesting races on the GOP side, thus increasing Republican turnout. And Republican turnout was significantly higher, I would say, in terms of raw numbers than Democrats. That's just a plain fact. In terms of overall percentage, not so much by far, but I will say that in terms of raw numbers, significantly more Republicans turned out because Kansas is a significantly more Republican state than it is a Democratic state. This was one of the very first starts to abortion bans being on the ballot across the United States. If you take a look across here, there are many states that have upcoming bans or upcoming measures on the ballot. For instance, Montana has one coming up. Nevada has one coming up. New York has one coming up. You have all of these states. Pennsylvania, for instance, South Dakota, which in 2006 and 2008 rejected an abortion ban measure pretty significantly compared to where they voted on the presidential level. There are many states here that have rejected abortion bans and some which have passed them, but none of them have come after the Dobbs decision until the Kansas one. None of those bans or initiatives had any merit to them until this Kansas one. And yet, voters in the state not only rejected the amendment, but by an overwhelmingly large margin. What we take away from this is that even red states have a pro-choice point of view. Even states that voted for Trump by 15 points bring it upon themselves to reject an initiative that would completely go along with the abortion views of President Donald Trump. When I said that nothing could change the midterm elections besides the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, I didn't say that because I expected them to do so. That was before the draft opinion. In fact, I said that a day before the draft opinion leaked to the American public. And while it is coincidental, it was something that we had at least expected to be a possibility, knowing that they were going to rule on it, but many pro-choice and pro-life advocates thought it would be very similar to previous rulings on this issue, that they would uphold Roe v. Wade as precedent and wouldn't go ahead and crack down on abortion access. The complete and total overturning of Roe v. Wade doesn't seem to be helping the Republican Party. And you might be saying, okay, 58.8 to 41.2. How many Republicans actually voted no on this amendment? How many Republicans who align themselves with a party that is vehemently pro-life? Steve Kornacki actually did the breakdown. I combined Kornacki and actually there. The breakdown here states that in terms of how many no votes at a bare minimum, they looked at how many votes were in the Democratic primary or the unaffiliated party or unaffiliated voters voting in just the referendum. If you were to combine all of the Democratic Party votes and the unaffiliated votes as just no votes, there would still be leftover votes that would have had to come from Republicans. At the bare minimum, 20% of Republicans who voted in yesterday's primary election voted no on the pro-life initiative put forth in the state of Kansas. This is not a swing state. This is not a state that should be going back and forth on an issue that seems to be going back and forth between Democrats and Republicans. There are very few pro-choice Republicans, very few pro-life Democrats, and the reason for that is because party polarization has forced these Republicans to take political stances on extreme parts of the aisle here when the American public is more so inclined to be pro-choice than not. But Republican primaries take the most extreme voters, and they vote for the most extreme candidates, and that's where polarization really comes from. But what we're looking at here in the state of Kansas, this is where the GOP was testing the waters. Not only did they quite literally drown, but they got eaten by a shark on the way. Looking at what happened in Kansas tells me that voters aren't happy with this decision. And looking at the generic ballot, take a look at how close it's got over the past couple of days. According to Real Clear Politics, Republicans lead by 0.3. Why is that significant? Because it means that on 538, it's a tie. It's a tie for the first time and the best showing result for the Democratic Party in 8 consecutive months. The last time Democrats led on the generic ballot was November 15th, and we are days away from Democrats leading up to leading on the generic ballot. Republicans had maintained a lead. In fact, we're in a much better position for the past 8 months than where they are today. And we are 98 days away from the midterm elections. Looking at the political forecasts across the United States, the Senate has completely flipped away from the Republican Party. 2 months ago, Republicans had a 60% chance at winning control of it. Today, that's 42%. Taking a look at the House elections, which isn't too far off, Democrats have narrowly increased their chance. At one point, Democrats were in a single-digit chance of victory, depending on the model that you're looking at. But overall, what we found is that Democrats now have a 1 in 5 chance at retaining House control. If anything, this should be 95-5 if this was a 2010 or 2014 type of national environment, especially considering this is the narrowest House majority in the 21st century. It's 221 to 214 because Republicans recently flipped a congressional seat in the state of Texas. They had good showings up until the Dobbs decision, because it isn't just Kansas. It's also that Nebraska 1st District. It's also the generic ballot. It's also a lot of these down ballot races that really seem to be turning away from the GOP. If anything was to become an important issue to voters, it was already going to be healthcare, COVID, inflation, whatever, right? Those mainstream issues the Republican Party has been very well positioned on because Joe Biden is unpopular. This Roe v. Wade decision didn't help Joe Biden's approval rating as much as people might think. It really didn't. But taking a look at the generic ballot, it did help the Democratic Party in a way that many people really didn't expect. Taking a look at a lot of the numbers that we see today, the Republican Party doesn't actually strike me as this party that is going into a very strong wave year. There are severe national implications for the Republican Party as a result of what has happened. There are severe statewide implications for the GOP in Kansas specifically. You know what's happening in Kansas this November? An extremely competitive governor's race with a Democratic incumbent governor in the state who is the second most popular Democratic governor in the entire country from the state of Kansas. An approval rating in the 60s. Republicans took the wrong choice, took the wrong side on this issue of abortion. And at least 20% of Republicans voted against where national Republicans stand on this issue. Again, Kansas is not a swing state. This is not us going to the state of Michigan and looking at it. And if Michigan was to reject an abortion referendum by 17 points, that would be national news. But the fact a Trump plus 15 state did it, meaning you're looking at a swing from Trump plus 15 to the Democratic controlled point or the Democratic leaning point plus 17, a 30-point swing in terms of public sentiment towards the issue of abortion. But that's not to say that voters all of a sudden changed their issue on being pro-life or pro-choice because of the Dobbs decision, but rather now they have had the full and total ability to turn out to vote in a referendum in a single issue choice option where they are completely pushing back on the Republican Party's national standpoint that they have held for the past 50 years. This should scare Republicans, and if it doesn't, I don't know what will. Because as I have been saying, Republicans are starting to see the numbers turn against them. What they are finding is that a lot of the new data that we are seeing now shows the Democratic Party in a significantly better position than where they were months ago. Taking a look at the numbers from June 24th, Democrats were down 3 points nationwide. Taking a look at February and January, Democrats were down 4 points nationwide. Today, they're down less than half a percentage point. How do things get better for the Democratic Party as the months progress, but Biden doesn't get that much better? Honestly speaking, I don't know. But what I do know is that this is just simply not good news for the GOP. Don't get me wrong, I still extremely expect them to win control of the House. I think this is a done deal, but the House isn't everything. The Senate is still very important, and the fact is, this Senate majority is also the narrowest we have seen in the 21st century as well. It is the narrowest Senate majority in the 21st century. I don't think people completely comprehend that. Because at the end of the day, this completely close Senate means that in any red wave or any narrow year in favor of the GOP, they would just need one seat. And yet they are struggling so hard to even get that. Kansas warns the Republican Party a lot of their worst fears. I think it tells them that this is something that they need to go ahead and realign on. Figure out what the right strategy is for 2022, because there are some states here with some extremely important elections, House elections, Senate elections, governor elections, that are going to be having elections on the issue of abortion this November or in 2024. And if voters in a red state associate the GOP with yes and still only give them 41% of the vote, what does that say for the GOP's issue and the GOP's branding? The No campaign here ran a very strong campaign. They were able to do what many people thought was impossible in the state of Kansas. Republicans were very confident, though. They didn't think that a state as red as Kansas could reject an issue that would allow the state legislature to restrict access to abortion across the state. But not only did they reject it, they did so by overwhelming proportions. And they did it in an extremely high turnout election. The estimations here, 47% turnout. About 67% of the voting population that voted in the 2020 election turned out in this election, in an August primary referendum joint election. 67%. These turnout numbers are the likes you might see in a 2014 or 2010 November midterm election. Not the type you would see in a primary with, yes, a very important issue, but even then, most people don't even care enough to vote in a primary or even know about the election well enough to vote in August. 67% of those who voted in 2020, the highest turnout election in United States history since 1900, 1900 was the last time we had turnout higher than the 2020 election, and 67% of them voted in an August primary/referendum. The organizing, the turnout, the energy behind the Vote No campaign drove up people to vote in epic proportions in the state of Kansas, and they rejected restricting access to abortion for women across the state in a very, very high fashion. This is proof that the Dobbs decision won't always go in favor of the GOP. This is proof that voters here are more energized to vote because of this issue of abortion being on the ballot and the Dobbs decision. I would also encourage you to take a look at the increase in voter registration amongst women in Kansas. I don't have the numbers up here, but you can find them on the internet following the leak and following the actual Dobbs decision. Because quite literally it went up, 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 and up. Looks like a mountain, especially following the Dobbs decision. And what did that result in? Hey, voters rejected it overwhelmingly. There are Republicans out there that are still going to vote Republican even though they voted no on this referendum, and that's just how it is. But we can't ignore the fact that there is, in fact, a Dobbs decision bump for the Democratic Party, and while it may have taken a month to get there, it is very clear that on this issue, the Republican Party is on the wrong side of the country, and they are going to likely pay for that in some very close elections this November. So thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.